what's in their customers' best interests.
Go ahead, sorry.
Around market evolution. But just really quick, for those folks who may not be that familiar with Pacificorp, we are a multi-state, 6-state electric provider. We only provide electricity. We aren't a dual fuel utility. People know us in Oregon, Washington, California as Pacific Power, or in Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming as Rocky Mountain Power. But it's really one company that integrates all of its resources and systems to serve customers across a really large geographic footprint. We have about 2.1 million customers across those 6 states, retail customers. And we have about 11,500 megawatts of generation in our portfolio, almost 18,000 miles of high voltage transmission. And that transmission footprint crosses 10 states. So outside of California, we are the largest private grid operator. And, whether it was by design or happy accident, that's kind of where we find ourselves. And our footprint touches all of the major trading hubs in the West. So it positions us well to really take advantage of the rich diversity of resources that the West has to offer. So really jumping in here, Pacificorp, and some folks have heard me say this in the past, has been RTO curious for a really long time. We've, whenever there has been a large, examination going all the way back into some of the restructuring orders, and even before that, in the formation of power pools, we've looked at, can there be benefits from combining and centralizing operations where it made sense. And we've had different iterations, different teams of personnel over the decades who have dug into and examined, whether RTO formation in the West makes sense or not. And, for a myriad of different reasons, that question of RTO formation has not really made a lot of progress in the West. But what has made progress in the West, particularly in the wake of the West Coast energy crisis, has been the emergence of market services. Particularly in 2014, the Western EIM, Energy Imbalance Market, introduced a real-time market overlay to the existing balancing area transmission topology of the West, which is a little bit backwards from how markets have evolved in other parts of the country, but has this demonstrated tremendous value since the EIM has emerged. And I don't know, Vicki, if you want to throw up that slide. It's really the only slide I've brought, but just to give people a reminder of what that EIM footprint looks like. This really started in 2014 through work that Pacificorp and the California ISO undertook to really establish that market. And since 2014, it's now includes more than 75% of the load in the West, could surpass 80% next year, depending on additional entries. But has really provided tremendous economic benefit just through the greater efficiency of that automated dispatch and being able to use the ISO's platform for that 5 to 15 minute real-time market. And so to date, it's I think the latest benefits report shows that there's been about $3 billion in economic benefit for EIM participants since 2014. And from Pacificorp's perspective, it's been about $540 million in benefits. And so those economic benefits, I think, are, they're real, they're interesting, but I think as we're finding, really just part of the story, the additional situational awareness and reliability benefit that we're finding from EIM as a tool to really give our system operators and our network control centers even better insight into what's going on in the region, particularly when we've had severe weather events, has really been tremendous. And, a tough thing to place an economic value on, but something that, once you start incorporating it in how you operate, really continues to deliver real value for ensuring the reliability of the system. So based on the success of EIM, there has been an off-on conversation across the region around formation of a day-ahead market. So building on that real-time balancing, market where you need a little bit extra or you have a little bit extra, you've got an automated, system that can cost-effectively dispatch and keep each balancing area in perfect harmony. Being able to optimize your resource portfolio with a deeper pool of resources in the region on the day-ahead basis, has the potential to provide, many times more value than what we see in the real-time market. I think the way I describe it to folks is, the way we operate now is, if you're planning tomorrow's meal, you're going to go into your pantry and your fridge and kind of figure out, what's cost effective and what looks good, and show up to the, with the best that you have. What EDAM really provides is you can, figure out tomorrow's meal from the farmer's market. You're just going to have a much bigger footprint and much more diverse resource mix to be able to optimize your day ahead needs against. And, that's a pretty exciting possibility. And so over the last year or so, pretty much the timeframe of 2022 was devoted to really, I would just, a very robust stakeholder process headed by the California ISO to design that day ahead market. I would describe it almost more as a negotiation. One thing to understand is, California within their current market already runs a day ahead market. So really what the EDAM, the extended day ahead market is the extension of that day ahead market to balancing areas to participants outside of California. And so I really have to, highlight just how good faith and really just the issues confronted, the compromises made, just the progress committed to out of the parties to really try to make a seamless day ahead market experience for those outside of California that will take advantage of what's already existing within California. That concluded after all of that work on December 7th. That's when the Cal ISO presented their draft market design. On December 8th, Pacificorp announced that we intend to go with the extended day ahead market. And I think that speed to commit to that market really reflects a couple of dynamics that I think are worth sharing. The first really is, commitments drive progress. I think when you look at Pacificorp's scale and footprint, commitment to EDAM, much like EIM, I think will have a catalytic effect of standing up that market and encouraging others to join, where we have strong transmission interconnection and relationships with other providers. The other piece, though, I think is also a recommitment to the EIM and to reassure our regulators, our customers, our stakeholders that there is durability in the energy imbalance market, and kind of address the cloud that I think has emerged over the future of EIM because of some of the discussions happening across the West around different market options. Some of that does bring into question whether the current EIM and its footprint will continue or not. And just as we see those benefits continue to grow, and if you really want to see some eye-popping numbers, look at the Cal ISO's third quarter benefits report from 2022 and compare that to previous years. You can see how, especially when there are significant heat or weather-driven events, that EIM tool really does deliver considerable economic benefit to the participants in the region. And frankly, we're seeing more and more interdependencies with California in particular on the availability of the EIM, which I think will kind of take me to my last point. And I'd love to tie that off and take any questions, which is the question of governance seems to be a major one around the direction of the West. And I think confidence in working together in these within the idea of market evolution. And I think, our journey at Pacificorp is one where, to start that energy imbalance market back in 2014, there really wasn't any governance specific to that market. We entered into, the ISO's existing governance, really with the understanding that this is a voluntary market, and if things aren't working out, there was pretty low barrier to exit, and B, that the value proposition and benefits to customers really at that time overwhelmed what we thought would be any real market problems or EIM doesn't work unless all parties are benefiting in some way, and we bought into that premise, and we think it's been validated over time. As other parties have joined the energy imbalance market, governance has evolved to reflect that diversity of participant and ensure that there are voices and representation outside of California that balances how decisions are made around the governance and future of that market. And that same governance model, that joint authority model, is evolving as well to now capture the broader issues and additional considerations of what the day ahead market will present. So we actually have quite a bit of confidence that governance for these voluntary markets, which again, you can fairly low barrier to entry, fairly low barrier to exit, is right sized for the issues that we bring to the table. There are a lot of issues that the California ISO Board of Governors deals with just within their own system structure that really have little bearing on what participation in EIM or EDAM will bring to the table. So how transmission costs are allocated within California and those participating organizations may increase. I may have more interest in how those decisions are made in the future as we get deeper into the markets. But for now, short of an RTO, we don't feel like there has to be ground up fundamental governance change in order to make that economic decision to benefit our customers by participating in EDAM. But a lot of conversations around, is this the last stop on the bus for Amanda, or are there further destinations beyond day ahead markets for the ISO and other Western partners? And that remains to be seen. But for now, we've got a great opportunity to try and stand up the day ahead market by the end of 2024, and that's really where our focus is now. So I think that's kind of the windshield tour. I'm happy to take questions or elaborate on any of those points.
Let me just ask something real simple, again, just to put it in perspective for those that deal more in the retail arena than the wholesale arena, which tends to, be involved with transmission more. Again, if you took all the transactions, all the load in the West, then the majority, and I'm interested in a more fine tuning percent than that, would be bought ahead because it'd be too risky, to stay unhedged for, half your load, obviously. And so if you took the percent that's bought forward versus day ahead versus clearing in the real time, just roughly what would those percents be for the total transactions?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's maybe a little bit of parsing there. So certainly, all utilities or power providers are, operating our portfolio approach, either from generators you own or you have contracts for, or, buying different power products in the marketplace. And those are what are going to be bid into the day ahead market and then optimized around. So as far as the number, kind of the volume of transactions that occur within, real time versus day ahead, I think, currently, for the real time market, it's about 5% of our daily transactions are occurring in the real time. We estimate that, about 80% of our transactions will occur in the day ahead.
Really?
And, that remaining would be, those self-scheduled, resources, those kind of special contracts, things that, don't immediately fit well into the ability to bid into and have, through the ISO engine, be able to re-optimize and dispatch back out to the marketplace. I would say, though, that 5% of transactions through EIM has meant 100% relook at how we operate our system. So it's, even though that volume is relatively low as far as these balancing transactions, it has really transformed how we look at our fleet, our generation fleets, and how we operate those. And so, even though, we don't have a day ahead market that we participate in today, we do know that there are certain times of the year, certain patterns that we see in the market where, for instance, we would see a lot of generation of California solar that would exceed load needs or demand in California that would be coming into the real-time market. And that allows us to either back down other resources, like say a coal plant, or not even turn on a gas plant because we have some degree of confidence that, in the real-time market, we're going to see cheaper energy showing up. So just as an example to throw out there, it really has been transformative in how we look at portfolio optimization and has had a real impact on lowering the net power costs for our customers. So we really are capturing savings by having more efficiency.
So the EIM to the EDAM step is huge. And then there might be another step for the full RTO for additional benefits for all citizens then.
Yeah, and I think, if one accepts that the West, is interested in more interoperability, they want, working together, sharing resources, leveraging, Northwest Hydro and Southwest Solar and, Wyoming Wind and all of the great attributes that we have in the region. If one accepts that, we'll be doing more and more and moving down that market path, the day ahead market is that next step. And really, I think that last leap between day ahead market and a full RTO is really getting more into untangling those tougher transmission issues around, consolidating operations and planning and depancaking rates and allocating the costs of existing and new transmission. And frankly, the really thorny issues that I think have frustrated RTO development, over time. I think this incremental approach is going to capture value in the near term for customers. We're going to get about 75% of the values that are being identified through things like the state-led market study. We're not going to waste time or let any delay get in the way of capturing those savings where we can. but also have, I think, a more clear line of sight on what the opportunity costs are of, not taking that next step, or better, identifying, where there's the political and economic will to go that next step.
Okay, let me take Amanda's question, and then I want to turn it over to Kelsie for a few comments just to manage our time. And then we'll have more questions for both Scott and Kelsie, and then I'm going to turn it over to Cullen. So Amanda, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Great presentation. Love listening to some of the way you articulate things. So I wanted to ask, when we think about reliability benefits and the benefits, the dollar amounts of having visibility into other people's systems and the interconnectedness, which helps us avoid outages and system problems. Can you ballpark it all? CAISO does really good tracking about dollar savings on EIM, but it doesn't take into account reliability, as you said. Can you handicap like how much benefit you think is reliability related in a dollar amount compared to what we're seeing in the dollar amount saved in EIM? I hope that was clear.
Yeah. I can't, but that is what we're pressing CAISO and others to really start looking at, because we're starting to see it more clearly. I think it was, kind of an afterthought, that reliability benefit in the development of the EIM. The counterfactual, methods of calculating savings, has been the easier nut to crack, and that's really how I think EIM benefits have been demonstrated to date. And then we see that more granularly in our net power costs that we file with our regulators every year. But that reliability benefit, trying to quantify that has been elusive, but we're seeing it enough now that people are asking, and not even asking, demanding to know what that looks like. And I think more work will happen there. Without a doubt, the September 6th heat event in California and parts of Southwest, the victory has many fathers. So demand response played a role. Having additional hydro in the Northwest due to kind of a late summer was also an important factor. But without a doubt, the EIM and having that ability to have that automated dispatch function, be able to quickly respond to supply issues and constraints, helped the region ride through that event. I think the ISO will definitely back that up. And there was not a load shedding event on September 6th. Exports through California, transmission was not curtailed. It was a close call, but we got through it. And what is the economic benefit of avoiding those problems? It's got to be huge. So our hope is that there will be more focus and work done in that area.
So just one, yeah, that was a great question. And just one thing to wrap that up. I mean, it's kind of risk management 101 that weather varies in a bigger geography, and weather's what drives these emergency situations, reliability problems, et cetera. And so if you can spread your risk, your clearing and settling in a bigger geography where the weather varies, then you have, more resources to draw from than you would have if, obviously it's concentrated in the same weather zone. So let me turn real quick, and we'll still have some time at the end to ask questions. So write them down. I'm going to introduce Kelsie, who's with NRDC as an energy advocate, and she focuses on electric market issues and has been involved with EDAM, and works in support of a carbon-free electricity system. She advocated for legislation before NRDC at the state level across the Western region to support renewable development and decarbonization. She holds a bachelor's in integrated mechanical engineering and sustainable development from Lay University, and a master's in environmental policy and management from University of Denver. So Kelsie, if you just want to provide a couple comments from your efforts, please go forward.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky. And I'll keep this pretty quick since I know we still have a few more points to get through. But like Vicky said, my name's Kelsie Gomaine. I work on the Sustainable FERC project at NRDC, and my work is focused on Western Grid, on all things the Western Grid. First, I do just want to say, Scott, I loved the metaphor of the EIM being like cooking from ingredients in your pantry and the EDM being like cooking from ingredients from a whole farmer's market. A wonderful way to simplify it. So thank you for that. I will definitely be using that in my own brain moving forward. Right now, I do just want to touch quickly on the governance aspects, since I know that that's something a lot of folks are really concerned about moving forward. In the California legislation, this upcoming legislative session, there will be a bill introduced. It hasn't been introduced yet, but there will be a bill introduced that will reform the CAISO Board of Governors to no longer be appointed by the California governor, but to be self-appointed after the initial stage, and will really encourage board members from other Western states to diversify the representation on the board. So like I said, I don't know bill-specific language as it's not introduced yet, but I believe the aim is to really keep it simple to reforming the board, but not going beyond that, because like the whole point of it is to not have California be the ones in charge, but to have the CAISO Board of Governors more diversified and be in charge. So that's something that we can all look forward to this coming legislative session in California, and can hopefully help give you confidence in CAISO's leadership moving forward. And I'll keep it just to that, since I know we're getting a little short on time. I want Cullen to have his full time. So thank you, and let me know if you have any questions at the end.
Okay. All right, I'm going to shift to Cullen, and actually this is just sort of looking more at more integrated transmission planning. So I'm not sure what the analogy is, a gourmet dinner at the Ritz or something, I don't know, but we'll let Scott think about that one and tell us his full RTO food analogy. So there is the FERC NOPR RM 17-21. And I know that among several things, Cullen, as the senior renewable energy advocate, has been involved with that. And he's part of the Climate and Clean Energy Program in the Eastern region and the FERC Sustainability Project. Previously, he was senior attorney and New York office director at Acadia Center, where he focused on clean energy policy in New York. He holds a JD and master's in environmental law from Vermont Law School and a bachelor's from DePaul University. So Cullen, please share with us your perspectives and work on this NOPR at FERC on better integrated regional planning, which isn't exactly an RTO, but maybe a push, not a nudge. Maybe you can explain that for us.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. I also say my video is acting up. So if you have problems hearing me, let me know, because it's fading in and out a bit from my end. But let's talk about the NOPR. And before we do that, why don't we I will back up a bit and discuss how we got to this point. And this discussion is fairly high level. I think this audience probably knows a lot of this. But I wasn't sure who was going to be on the call, so I kept it fairly high level. But I'm happy to dive into any of this. So folks probably know this, but back in 2011, FERC issued Order 1000. The goal of that order was to improve the planning and cost allocation process in both RTO and non-RTO regions. Order 1000 had four major components to it. It imposed new regional transmission planning requirements, including a process for incorporating public policy projects into the planning process. It imposed new interregional transmission planning requirements. It applied a new cost allocation principles for both regional and interregional transmission. And maybe most importantly, at least for some, it eliminated the federal right of first refusal for projects that were subject to regional cost allocation. So what has happened from 2011 till now? I think most people would say that Order 1000 really hasn't worked very well. And I'll say I work in RTO regions. I work primarily in the East, so that is what I know the best. I don't really work in the West. and I don't really work in non-RTO regions, but I will do my best if folks have questions. But in most RTO regions, projects that are exempt from regional planning requirements constitute the vast majority of approved projects. This is especially true in PJM, where I spend a lot of my time. Most of the approved projects are called supplemental or end-of-life projects. This gets around the ROFR and it gets around the competitive bidding process. This has resulted in mostly local projects rather than regional or interregional projects. There are virtually no interregional projects, or at least large ones, the last 10 years or so. In most non-RTO regions, regional planning is sort of functionally non-existent. That's certainly true in the East. At best, it's a paper exercise that doesn't really result in regional projects getting built. And meanwhile, we know most studies say that we need between 2 and 5 times more transmission than we currently have by 2050 to meet clean energy goals, ensure that we can keep the lights on during extreme weather events, and meet consumer demand. From our perspective, the current planning process in all planning regions, this includes both RTOs and non-RTOs, has a number of flaws. We don't think it's sufficiently long-term. In other words, it doesn't look far enough into the future, nor typically does it use scenario planning to identify no regrets projects that may be needed in a variety of possible futures. For the most part, it doesn't adequately plan for the generation we know is coming online in the coming years. And so as a result, most of the build out happens in the interconnection process, which is an inefficient way to build out the grid, and a fairly and an unfair way to allocate costs. It incentivizes transmission owners to plan the system to meet local rather than regional or interregional needs, and it doesn't assess all of the benefits of transmission, and then costs are not allocated based on these benefits. So that's the background. Let me talk about the current rulemaking. July of 2021, FERC issued an advance notice of proposed rulemaking called the ANOPR. There were 2 rounds of comments. I assume some folks on this call submitted comments. We submitted comments. And then in April of 2022, FERC issued its NOPR, which was also followed by 2 rounds of comments. So the record is pretty extensive in this rulemaking. It makes a number of proposed changes. I'll talk about a few of them. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'll talk about the biggest ones from our perspective. So it requires transmission providers to engage in long-term planning, and it specifically requires that providers develop long-term scenarios over at least a 20-year period. It also proposes 12 benefits that transmission planners can consider in their long-term scenarios. Things like production cost savings, reduced loss of load, access to lower cost generation. But however, this is a big one for us. The rule does not require a minimum set of benefits to be considered. And folks know this on the call, I assume, but this is important because not requiring a minimum set of benefits allows providers to use extremely narrow benefits assessments to build the transmission they may want to build at the expense of transmission that provides more benefits to the entire region. And with respect to RTO and non-RTO regions, while RTOs is, at least my experience, RTOs may not consider all of the benefits of transmission and looking at projects to include in the regional plans, they generally do a better job than non-RTO regions, which generally rely on the assessments of individual utilities. So we think not requiring a minimum set of benefits is likely to aggravate the differences between RTO and non-RTO regions, but requiring a minimum set would likely have the opposite effect. It also continues to silo public policy, economic, and reliability projects by only requiring public policy projects to be part of that long-term regional planning process. We think that's a serious problem because it will result in an uncoordinated overall planning approach and will likely lead to poorly targeted investments. And it does not, the rule does not address interregional at all. And so it's not clear if this will be addressed in a separate rulemaking. Let me talk about a few of our recommendations, and then I'll talk about sort of next steps, at least with the rule. So we have a number of recommendations. The biggest one for us is to require a minimum set of benefits that must be assessed as part of all transmission planning. As I said, there's a list of 12 in the NOPR. We think those are good. It doesn't have to be all 12. It could be a subset, but I think the important thing is that there is a minimum requirement. We also think that there should be a list of specific factors that are to be used in scenario planning. So for example, scenarios should include 100% of the binding federal, state, and local climate and clean energy requirements, as well as like corporate utility procurement targets, increased electrification levels based on trends, things like that. We also think that the rules should require that planning be done comprehensively on a portfolio basis rather than in a siloed or individual basis. We also think that the rules should ensure that cost allocation considers all the benefits of transmission. And finally, that the planning entities, providers in each region make a very good faith effort to implement the long-term planning results. So where do things stand? All the comments are in, and we are waiting for a decision from FERC. As folks probably know, Chairman Glick's term was not renewed. So right now there is a 2-2 split at FERC, and it is not clear if there are 3 commissioners who will vote in favor of the rule as it now stands. There are 2 Republican commissioners, Commissioner Danley and Commissioner Christie. Danley clearly won't vote in favor of the rule, and it's not clear where Christie stands. I don't know if he has come out, I think, publicly and said that he doesn't agree with everything in the proposed rule. So it's likely to get his vote that it may need to be watered down. And so we may have to wait until Glick's seat is filled, and that may be a few months. It's also not clear if the acting chair, who is Willie Phillips, will remain as chair, and whether he will push for a separate rulemaking on interregional. So that's currently where we're at, and I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Can I just explain? I put up the RTO picture just to see the gray voids, but there is some coordinated planning in the West, but it's different than an RTO's ability to plan, given some of the factors that you just mentioned, Cullen. They're more solid, than looser coordination. And so I just thought that visual was important to see. I'm going to take it down though. So any questions for Cullen? And then I want to make sure that TEP and APS get to provide a comment or two. Clear. Okay, thank you very much. So there might be some more questions here after we think about a little more. Thomas, do you want to just explain where APS is on EDAM and the RTO efforts in a couple minutes? And then if Alex wants to, or Eric, I don't know if Eric's on anymore. Yeah, Eric's here. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So pretty much bottom line, we are still in our investigative process with EDAM and with SPP joining the fray. We're still looking at all of those. Essentially, we're just trying to evaluate different participations in a concerted effort to meet our long-term initiatives to decarbonize generation resources by 2050 while still maintaining reliable and affordable rates. So we are looking at, we've committed to the first phase of the Western Resource Adequacy Program, which is a regional resource adequacy construct. And we are digging in real deep to make sure that if we choose to move forward with a day-ahead market, we're choosing the right one that's best for our customers. So that's pretty much where we stand right now. We've got a couple of teams working on the different options that are in front of us, and we'll just continue to keep on trying to make the best decision for our customers.
Hey, Alex or Eric, you want to say where TEP is?
Yeah, so this is Eric Bronner here with TEP. I did what APS said there. Basically, we continue to evaluate the market alternatives. We're happy that there are market alternatives out there. We recently entered the EIM market and are seeing the benefits real time of that. As we explore day-ahead market opportunities, it's nice to see our utility peers in the Southwest as well as the balance of the West, looking at what alternatives are out there. Obviously, it'll take mass to create a market. The CAISO has a good mass already, so they got a good head start. But there's also a lot of load and resources to optimize in between the current SPP market and the CAISO, and that's basically the exploration that's going on between us and the other Western utilities and participants. Is what are those market alternatives, and what is the best to serve our customers and our needs, both economically and reliably. So.
I mean, not to oversimplify, the state-led study among others, and then of course what Scott has shared on behalf of Pacificorp. I don't think it's deniable that there are significant additional savings for citizens of Arizona when the utilities join a day-ahead market and or an RTO. And so every day we don't join, it costs us more money than it would have. So I understand the quote caution to evaluate. I know we are not as interconnected with SPP's area. And I know this isn't simple, but at a high level, it's just like, why have we not decided? I don't know what others are thinking, but. David?
I had a question for Scott, if I could. Scott, David Getz, Southwestern Power Group, transmission developer here in Arizona, New Mexico. I'm curious, just focusing on the one of the issues in EDAM, and we're not very close to it, but perhaps you could advise, at least for Pacificorp, when as you're thinking about EDAM and existing ATC that exists in your territory, what are your thoughts or outlook today? In essence, do you have enough ATC today to make? I would imagine you do. That's why you put your hand up for EDAM for a lot of reasons. But to me, one of the real questions longer term, and obviously it's specific to the connections, but is there enough ATC? What new wire might ultimately need to get built to really get all the benefits, as you talked about, of having a whole garden of ingredient opportunities? We know the grid here in Arizona pretty well, not quite as well as some of the utilities, but pretty well. And there's not a lot of ATC anywhere. I mean, at least in the desert Southwest, I'm guessing it's the same for you guys. So that's always been one of my questions, because again, we support the EIM and the concepts, but as an independent developer who spent 15, 16 years on SunZia, we know it takes a really long time to put new steel in the ground for transmission. And to me, that could be one of the real challenges that could, I don't say delay things, but EDAM might not achieve its full potential. So I know nothing about the analysis that lies behind that. So for Pacificorp, do you guys have enough to make a good start? And is there anything else you can say about, in general, current ATC that would facilitate EDAM?
And ATC available transmission capacity.
Yeah, no, excellent question. Preach that about how long it takes to get transmission projects built. We just broke ground on our Gateway South project, second quarter of last year, and that project's been, on the books, for about 12 years. So yeah, no, I feel your pain there. That's a really rich question. I don't want to over answer, but what I would say is for the day ahead market, the ATC that's there is the ATC that will be used. And so that lack of, available transmission is a big part of the challenge in the West, no matter what the market structures are. So if you even look at, the wheel through issues with, through California from the Northwest into the Southwest, that constraint, those challenges exist because of the limited or the really limited transfer capability through the ISO as a pathway. So these constraints are there. What EDAM does, I think, is where we can identify and offer transmission to the market, we're going to do so. We're going to optimize around that. It's going to show two things, I think. It's going to improve benefits. It's going to help us better manage net power cost savings, especially through a really challenging period, I believe, is coming for almost all utilities from 2025 to 2030, where we're really going to be, supply chain and, resource constrained as we really go through this resource transition period. It's going to show that more transmission is needed, and it's going to help build that economic case even further for additional investment to relieve those constraints and provide more transmission to the market, and have a market waiting for that transmission when it shows up to be able to utilize. So I think, that's going to be a positive step regardless of the business model, investing in that transmission. The other piece is it's also going to show how much money is being left on the table because, again, the opportunity costs of not having an RTO and being able to de-pancake rates, free up transmission, move away from some of the legacy contracts and some of the transmission that you just can't touch and can't offer into the day ahead market. So it's not a silver bullet perfect solution, but it's improvement and it's growth over where we are today. And I think it brings greater clarity on where we need to go tomorrow.
Okay, so two of my board members are going to have to drop off, and I've got to get a quorum real quick. All we have to do really is approve our minutes, but maybe if there's follow-up questions, we can just send them to the participants as an option, and we really, really appreciate your time. It's a complicated subject matter, but I wanted to introduce it. I'm thankful that some of the new commissioners listened in, and we got to just hear what's going on in and around us with regard to EDAM and RTOs and everything. And so thank you for your time. And I'm going to move to the formal board meeting real quick, which will be boring. So I don't want to stay on. Thank you again. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording too. Thanks.